All right, guys, we know as the show progressed yesterday that it seemed like Jim Schwartz was going to stay on, then he wasn't going to stay on. And now it looks more and more likely that he will no longer be the defensive coordinator from the Browns. This is the latest update from Albert Breer on that situation. Albert Breer tweeted out, Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz has been telling his assistants and friends that the only way he was staying was as head coach for a couple weeks now. Cleveland wants him back. Maybe Todd Monken can draw him back in, but that's no sure thing. Again, he's still under contract, so that has to be figured out. But according to multiple reports, Jim Schwartz had alerted the Browns that it's either me or I'm out. And then last night, Myles Garrett, the start offensive end for the Cleveland Browns, the defensive player of the year, presumably, put up this Instagram story. If you guys haven't seen it, it's worth taking a look. But just simply with no comment attached to it, the classic meme of, I'm over this stuff.
By the way, our guy Xavier P had a problem with Myles and Garrett doing this. Do you have a problem, Myles Garrett? He said he should have kept it internal and not put this out publicly.
You can do whatever you want.
I was about to say.
Right. I think when you put that like look, so Myles Garrett obviously is going to have an affinity to Jim Schwartz.
Yes.
He had his best year under him. He's been here for 3 years. The defense, he put him in multiple positions to make plays. We've seen middle linebacker Myles Garrett. We've seen the crossover dribble Myles Garrett. Obviously, he's going to have an affinity, and that's his man. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's not going to be there no more. So I don't even take it as, like, I'm over this. I take it as, man, that's sad to see my dude go. So, okay, he'll be all right. Like, hey, you broke the sack record. There's a new coach. There is new change. But at the end of the day, like, it's okay for him to express that. I mean, it's just how he went about doing it. So we got the picture.
Myles,
So the question I want to ask you guys, though, just like we did with Monkey, 24 hours, we've had it simmer, we've been able to think on it. Knowing all what we know now, based on what we learned from noon yesterday to 12:29 or 11:29 this morning, Ty, do you think the relationship is salvageable between the Browns and Jim Schwartz? And if you're Todd Monken, do you think you'd even want Jim Schwartz back after the display we've seen from him in the last 24 hours?
Anything salvageable. As bad as things get, anything salvageable for sure. Could they? I mean, I know he's gonna have a lot of suitors. I mean, think about it. He could go to San Francisco or Buffalo. He could probably be in the Super Bowl next year with those two teams if he decided to be the defensive coordinator there. I think that relationships do matter in this situation. This is his guys, so that plays a part into it. It's kind of hard to walk away from guys, especially when you have so much production. The thing about Jim Schwartz is, like, he didn't say much. But, like, it was like an understanding between him and his players that, like, the offense ain't going to give us nothing, so we got to be perfect. And those guys played their butt off for him. Like, they played lights out for that man because that was the expectation that he held them to. And sometimes it's hard leaving that and trying to build that relationship with a whole new group of guys. So, can Todd Monken talk to him? Sure. I think he should definitely reach out to him and see if they could, hey, man, listen, I need you here. I would love for you to stay, be the DC. You and I can work this thing together, help each other out here and stuff like that. It's my first time as a head coach. You've been a head coach. We can really be a partner on this thing and really, take Cleveland to a place that they've never been, championship game. Definitely with the front office, though, like, I get it, like, because I've been in different situations where it's like my beef wasn't with the team, the coaches, it was with the front office, where it's like I just didn't like the way they handle certain things. And so Jim Schwartz, I totally understand where you're coming from in that situation. Is it worth walking away from these group of guys? And I think that's the question that he got to ask himself and find the answer to. And, if they want to throw another zero at the end of his salary, I mean, that would definitely help as well because maybe he felt like they did him wrong. And the only thing that can make people feel like you didn't do them that wrong is you throw another zero behind it. So, yeah.
I'm not sure it's salvageable. Now, I'm not going to say anything is anything. I've learned that as men, as long as you don't take my money or you put hands on me or say something about my family, you can have a conversation about certain things. Now, I think this circumstance is a little different because you got a new head coach in, and obviously Jim Schwartz felt a certain type way. Now, I'm not going to, I'm one of the people that said I had Jim Schwartz 60-40 in getting the job. So when he didn't get the job, I was like, okay, well, they must have already talked to him about staying on as D coordinator. But it seems as if they didn't do a good job of communicating that to him, because he seems like he just came in, was ready to take the job, and then got on Twitter and found out that Todd Monken was the new head coach. So again, I don't know exactly how it went down, but the communication seems to be lacking there. I would have rather you have a conversation with Jim up front, say, listen, we're interviewing these group of candidates. You are in the mix for it. However, in the event that if you don't get this job, what do you feel about staying on?
But they could have asked that.
He could have asked.
And he could have said, yeah.
He could have said,
I'll stay.
And then when it happened,
it was a different feeling.
It's just like, hey, tell me, you ask your wife, hey, tell me the truth. Mm-hmm. And then she tell you the truth, and you be mad.
Yeah.
Don't get mad, bro.
The problem is, and maybe this is misreporting, but the reporting was consistently that part of the deal was they wanted to keep Jim Schwartz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you made that part of the deal, you got to make sure that part of the deal is locked in. So the Browns, like, once they decided to hire Monken, before any word got out, they needed to go back to Jim Schwartz, even if they had talked about it with him, which it seems to me, as what you said, they didn't talk to him about it. But even if they did, he initially said yes, and then in the end he got pissed and changed his mind. Like, you have to go to him and say, hey, Jim, we're going to announce tomorrow that Todd Monken's the head coach. I don't know that you go this far, but basically say, hey, listen, whatever it takes to keep you. We want you as our DC. We'll make you the highest paid DC. Nobody's going to step on your toes on the defense. Like, I would still try that. I think it's going to be hard to repair this bridge here. If I were Jim Schwartz, I would be very offended.
Yeah.
I would be annoyed.
I totally get it.
And but I will say, if it's correct, the way he handled it was not business savvy.
Not at all.
No.
Like, you can't crash out and
walk out.
And walk out. Like, you have to in his mind, it was almost like, that's why I need the information, because in his mind, I wouldn't have expected a seasoned veteran to act like that.
Yeah.
Like,
it sounds like he just got the news like everybody else got the news.
Right.
It
seemed like he expected to be the head coach.
Like, it almost seemed like just the contract went dry. Like, okay, we just gonna go through the preliminaries and we get this, and then he just saw it. So that's why I'm waiting. I really would be anxious to hear that.
If you believe the reporting, and like I said, Breer put out there that he'd been telling them for weeks, if I'm not the head coach, I'm out.
Yeah.
If you want to believe that, and I tend to, because multiple national people have put that out there.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how we got to the situation where yesterday the Browns were still, according to their reports, trying to pair him with someone else. If he had told them point blank,
it doesn't.
I'm not sticking around.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
And I heard my guy Nick Wilson said, well, it's a good job, so he's going to want to stay. I thought you made the best point. The best argument for him staying is the relationship with the players. I think that's the only thing that might keep him here. Your money, fine. Well, the Niners would pay him a lot of money too, but
your taxes hit harder out there. I showed you my check.
Yeah,
you're right. That's true.
Yep.
But you're right. That relationship with Myles Garrett, with Denzel Ward, with these guys, that's the only thing I think that has a chance to keep him here, because the fact that it's a good job, first of all, it's only a good job for him, because whoever the next DC is, they're not going to get credit for the defense because Jim Schwartz already has the credit.
Yeah.
If it goes down at all, he's going to get blamed.
Mm-hmm.
But for Jim Schwartz, you say it's a good job. Why? If he didn't get this head coaching job, he's never getting a head coaching job.
Probably not.
Right? So, like, the fact that you think of a good job as something that might be a stepping stone to a promotion.
Yeah.
At this point, Jim Schwartz has got to realize, well, that's out the window.
The fact of the matter is this. The Browns botched this whole thing. You know why? Because back in, I don't know, I'd say probably like early November, you could have just fired Kevin, made Jim Schwartz the interim.
You're right.
Gave him the whole rest of that season to see how that season turned around, and then you would have had more data on it.
You're right.
But
it's a great point. Usually I say, what's the point of firing him? But in this case, there would have been.
Yeah, if you knew you was firing him anyways, you should have just fired Kevin right there mid-season and let Jim run it from there. You could have got a good old runway of what it would have been.
Some tells me it wasn't even about the runway. Like, when you see Jim Schwartz, he's a finished product. He's been, you know who he is. Like, at that point in time, you know what Jim Schwartz's strengths, weaknesses, what his temperament is. Like, So, like, for me, it didn't even seem like they needed a runway to give him an audition period, because I think if they really liked him, they would have just hired him. I feel like they felt that the Cleveland, when you looked at it, I looked at the two resumes. And when the Browns came out and said their whole focal point was to make sure that this offense got off and running.
Yeah.
And when they said that at the end of the season, I looked at Jim Schwartz and said, well, they love him over here. But I started to look and think, like, okay, if you want the offense to get off the ground, and you already got these guys defensively over here, like Grant Delpit, Myles Garrett, Denzel, all those guys, Schlesinger, which is easier to find? Somebody that already helped these guys they're elite. It don't take much to say, hey, Denzel, go guard that dude one-on-one. Hey, Myles Garrett, put your hand in the dirt.
Why, you saying that DC doesn't matter?
No, what he's saying is it's harder to find an OC than a play caller than to have a defensive play
And I think the Browns, for whatever reason, even though Jim Schwartz apparently had made it clear, they had convinced themselves that Schwartz was going to stay. So in their minds, they said, well, why would we make Jim Schwartz the head coach? We need offense. We already got Jim Schwartz for the defense. Why? Like, if we hire a defensive guy, now we still have to find the offensive guy.
Because you was
which is interesting, because I'm sure when they interviewing these guys, they probably asked, what's the list of coordinators that you want to bring? They must have not liked that list.
And I think also, like, when they asked him, and I think he came in, and I actually think, in my mind, this is headcanon, who knows? But I think they really was interested in Jim Schwartz. And I think that they were really, really considering those two. But I think Todd Monken came in and laid out an offensive game plan as to what he thinks that he can do to improve the offense. And they couldn't pass it up.
Right.
They said this guy has experience with young players in college. We're drafting a bunch of young players. He has experience with Lamar Jackson and a really good offense. He's coached the MVP before.
Is their offensive line like that?
They just brought their offensive line coach in.
No, I'm saying Baltimore's offensive line, like players, was they?
I think it was okay.
They had a good center, good tackles. Guard play was iffy. That was the report coming out of last year.
The offensive line coach was here. Did we talk about that already?
Well, he's here now.
He's here now.
He's back.
Yeah.
But he had been here when Joe Thomas was here.
So, so I think they
he was with Mangini and them.
I think he was with Mangini, Shermer, and Chudd.
09 to 13. George Warhop, by the way, who was the Ravens' offensive line coach last year, is now the Browns' offensive line coach. He's the first hire by Todd Monken.
So, he was with Mangini. Shermer was here 11 and 12, right? And then Chudd in 13,
Chudd was
I believe.
13,
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. My brain's a little scrambled these days.
He made it through 3 different.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And to this point, though, Bull, like, I wanted Schwartz to be here, but a lot of people gave me pushback, or a lot of pushback was, hey, if you got another coach in mind, don't you want that man to be able to put his staff
Absolutely,
together?
and I was one of those people that said that. So in the end, if Schwartz leaves, okay, I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world. My beef is not necessarily that he's leaving.
It's the
My
process.
beef is how it got to this point.
I agree with you.
Right.
But I said all along,
because you hired a person that's best for the job. If Jim Schwartz leaves with that, so be it.
Yes,
that's part of the deal.
The head coach is more important than the coordinator. That's the bottom line. You got to have the
100 of 100.
You got to have the right head coach.
It was messy.
But it was messy.
It is messy.
But even though I wanted the head coach to pick their DC, my hope was that they'd want to pick Jim Schwartz.
Right.
But they shouldn't be forced to pick Jim Schwartz. And it seemed like Todd Monken,
probably,
and
was
why wouldn't he be, was okay with Schwartz.
And Jim Schwartz took himself. I think in that moment, Jim Schwartz was like, I'm taking myself. You got to think about it. At that point in time in your life, I think he was dealing with two things. One is the fact that he had been there and done a good job, and he thought he was so close.
Right.
And then the second part I think he was dealing with when he crashed out a little bit was the realization, like you said, that probably was my best chance to get another chance to be a head coach. And so that kind of died with that move. Now it's like, now he has to internalize it and wrap his head around, like, because he probably would thought, like, one day, if you're a head coach in the league and you get fired, and especially if you feel like you're a great coordinator, you feel like at some point in time you're going to get that opportunity again.
Right.
And when it don't happen, it's like.
And when another guy who was a coordinator he was good as a coordinator, but so were you, and you did it here,
Right.
and they promoted him from
Right.
outside the organization over you.
It feels
and
like they
feel-
didn't appreciate you.
That's right.
It does
Yeah.
come on. But
I see what-
you throw a zero behind there.
That could, you know.
I got one last question, then we'll
Yeah.
pivot over to the QB development part because I know a lot of people are
Right.
excited about that part of the Todd Monken hire. But in the reporting we've got, and once again, you can pick and choose who you want to believe, which ones are real or not. Mary Kay and everyone else has said that Todd Monken would be open to keeping Schwartz, right? So that means in the interviews with Todd Monken, keeping Schwartz was at least something that had been brought up because they felt comfortable, he was comfortable in keeping Jim. According to Albert Breer and others, Schwartz was saying, I'm not staying unless I'm head coach.
Yeah.
Where do you think that miscommunication came into play? Was that something that AB and Haslam refused to believe? Where do you think that actually the fraction in what is being reported from both sides came into fruition?
I just think there's no way that you sit down with this man for 3 weeks, interviewing this man, and it don't come up as, if we decided to go a different route, would you still be the DC?
Right.
And I think, like I said, I don't know. It's so weird because it's just the way he responded to the news that makes it seem like he didn't know that this was going to happen.
Why are you asking Todd Monken, will you keep Jim Schwartz, if Jim Schwartz has told you, I'm not staying if Todd Monken gets hired?
Yeah,
I don't think there's any clear answer to how that happened.
The whole communication part of it is just, I don't know. I don't understand how you could get mixed up like that.
You know, sometimes, I guess, I had somebody get really angry at me over the last couple of years about something. They were mad at me. When they first confronted me on this, I thought they were joking. Because I was like, I hadn't done anything that I thought would get this person angry. And they were really mad. And when I realized they were being serious, I was like, oh my God, what did I do to offend this person? I don't know.
What'd you do?
I don't want to get into it, but it was miscommunication, right? Like, I hadn't really done anything, but they had perceived something I did as disrespectful. It was not intended to be disrespectful in any way. I didn't realize that the person, but then they let it fester. They didn't really talk about it, and then eventually confronted me, and they were very angry.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I could see is like, maybe Jim Schwartz wasn't 100%. The only way I'm trying to defend the Browns a little, which I rarely do, Jimmy, but like maybe Jim Schwartz wasn't perfectly clear. Maybe he was telling people he knew. He's like, I'm not taking. And maybe Jimmy it was like, you know what? We're paying him a lot of money. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. You know, like when you're a billionaire, you're like I can throw money at it. It's going to be okay. Maybe he didn't realize just how serious this was to Jim Schwartz.
I just think he was hurt.
Yeah.
Hurt.
If I'm going in there,
he's hurt.
I'm not staying unless I get the job. I would just say that. Like, if you don't hire me,
maybe he didn't make it clear. That's the only thing.
Like, if you say that, like that's.
Right.
And then they still hire Todd Monken, then okay. All right, then that's like a spit in the face.
Yeah, right.
The people the closest to you have the ability to hurt you. I've gone in, and I'm not gonna say where it was. I've interviewed at places after I've interned somewhere for a whole year, and we've gone into the interview process. I'm thinking it's about to be a process to like get a job or entry level or something.
They say this what Shador did in his interviews in the NFL.
Went in there, pulled up, and they was like, "Hey, no, this really wasn't no interview. We was just gonna go over your resume. We was gonna help you get your resume to turn it into other people."
What?
Right, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
What?
That what?
You done got dressed up and everything, walked in there.
Mind you, I had already graduated college. I was already out of college.
We helping you with your interview
and
your resume?
But you know what? It was the first time that I was in an interview, and everything in me wanted to be like, I wanted to it was wild. I had to show some level of restraint and professionalism because at the end of the day, if you crash out before you even get your foot in the industry, how you gonna work? But I will say it taught me a lesson. You never assume, and you got to do your mental preparation before you go in every interview, and you got to think worst case scenario. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
They don't give me the job. What's my next plan?
Right,
contingency.
Right. Now, in fairness, last thing is that all these things about Schwartz being mad, he didn't say them publicly.
No, this is
what people are saying.
Reporting,
so it wasn't like he decided to put it out there. Clearly, he was ticked. At least one person knew about it. I can't blame him. I did hear somebody today say, well, he shouldn't have done it before he got another job. This is not going to stop the 49ers from offering him the DC job.
Not at all.
So.